Hey everyone, Clio here and welcome to a reading vlog. I have the full week off, so this reading vlog is intended to be a week-long reading vlog, and since I have the full week off, I'm planning to read a lot. So I will be participating in the Make Your MythTaker readathon and in the Olympic Games readathon. So for Make Your MythTaker, my primary goal is to become a goddess, and so that is also the TBR that I have declared. And then for Olympic Games I will be participating in Team Zeus. So the reason I gave already my TBR video, but my name is Clio. It comes from the Greek muse of history, and so I consider that I need to become the goddess that I actually am, and that I need to support my father Zeus by being in his team, in his camp. As far as I'm aware, also that's just the way that Camp Half-Blood usually works in Percy Jackson. Have not read Percy Jackson, sorry. So because the readathon for Make Your MythTaker is a readathon in which you have to read the books that you want to read in order, I will be starting out with those books specifically. I will then also be moving on to the first basic prompts for the Olympic Games, and some of those books will actually further my character of the muse Clio. So without further ado, let's dive into the reading. So the first book that I will be reading is the Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. This fits the prompt of reading a book that has a non-human main character, because we are following a cat. So we are following the cat Nana. She is on a road trip. Her owner, who is Japanese, so the book is set in Japan. Her owner is going on a road trip. As far as I'm aware, it's to visit some of his old friends from when he was younger, but the cat of course doesn't know very much more, and I also don't know very much more. But this is definitely a book that is recommended a lot on like a reading group on Facebook for people here in Belgium, but it's also a book that once I saw this cover, I've been dying to read this one, because I have cats, I love my cats. I'll include them later in the reading vlog, but they're both hiding out in their cat trees at the moment, so they're basically invisible at the moment. And also I just love Japanese literature, so that's another reason why I really want to read this one. So I guess I need to acknowledge that I have barely done any reading. So I last checked in with you guys on Monday. I read 90 pages in the meantime. So yeah, it's not been a great reading time. It has been a great time for reaching out to the community, so I've had a lot more direct contacts with some people within the community than I usually do have. I've also been exploring a lot of new booktubers, which has been great. I have definitely been part of the neglect of Black voices, because I definitely have explored some wonderful new creators over the past few days that I hadn't stumbled upon yet, or that I hadn't watched that many videos of before. So I definitely encourage you all to do the same. Not just let this be a one-time thing, not just let this be like a one-time realization that you could do better. Learn to do better forever. So if you have seen some of my other videos over the past period, you might have noticed that I am putting some links in. Well, I'm putting one link in the description that is sort of a master link to where you can donate and stuff like that. I might also put some Twitter threads in the description that I'm saving for myself, with like booktuber recommendations, but also book recommendations for books written by Black authors, or books about racism in general, racism in America. So that has been taking up a lot of my time, and it should be taking up a lot of my time. So, but that doesn't mean that I don't really have a lot to update you guys on. Part of me wants to be like, oh no, but you should be reading. But a way bigger part of me is like, you have, like, the reason why you're not reading is valuable. The reason why you're not reading is because you are engaging with this page in history rather than trying to shy away from it. I would definitely, you know, I understand that some people feel the need to shy away from it, but I would also examine that a little bit. You know, are you shying away from it just because it makes you feel uncomfortable, because your discomfort, where is it coming from, and is it worth it to shy away from this reality just to feel comfortable, when you know that facing this reality can help so many people, and by facing this reality you can support so many people. So yeah, I have been having difficulties reading. I don't know whether this is going to change in the coming days. I don't even know if I'm going to post this in the end. It'll depend, I guess, if I rewatch this clip, what I think about it. But so yeah, I think when I last updated you on my reading, I hadn't even started reading yet. So I have read about 90 pages now of the Traveling Cat Chronicles. This is very much a palate cleanser in terms of what is happening in the real world at this point, because it's very much more of a innocent, it's more of a innocent, fluffy story. So we are following the cat Nana. She is at the beginning of this book a street cat, but so she is kind of, there's like a human living where she likes to hang out for the evening, who kind of wants to take her in, but she's not having any of that until she is hit by a car and he helps her recover, and then she becomes this forever cat. But so this is, at the time that this story is taking place, the owner of the cat, for some reason that we are not introduced to, needs to get rid of the cat, and so he is visiting some people, interviewing them, seeing whether they have a connection to Nana, and deciding on who gets to keep Nana. But so through these travels we are getting a look at the history of our owner, at the history of the person taking care of her now, and of the history of the people he was in contact with. And so far it has been a lot about the relationship between children and parents. So there's been a lot of tormented relationships between children and their fathers. So fathers exerting control over their children, rather being the authority figure rather than being the loving parent. I have an idea about where this might be going. That's going to be hard-hitting if it is indeed that case, but I will continue on reading, though the pacing will probably continue to be rather slow, because my mind isn't really wanting to focus on reading at the moment, isn't really wanting to focus on taking in this type of story maybe, or just stories in general at the moment. So I'm very much more spending my time now on watching BookTube and on watching and on following the events and on following the developments of these protests online. Hey guys, it's Friday already, so I wanted to do the update yesterday, but I finished my first book, finished The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. So I finished it rather late last night, and so I could have done it with the lights on, I guess, but I wanted to just do it in natural light, and also I was crying at the end of this, so I wanted to spare you guys my weepy face. But so yeah, this is definitely a cry book. I don't know whether everybody would cry. The reason that I had to cry was because it was going into like, it was very much linked to the loving relationship between animals and their owners. So if you were somebody who just doesn't like cats, or who's not interested in like pets or something like that, I don't know whether it would hit you that hard, but if you have pets, I definitely think that you would also end up at least tearing up a little bit. Probably not everybody will be crying, but so yeah, I won't say it's like a hard-hitting book. It just gets like, you get a little bit teary-eyed at times, and so I did have to cry towards the end of it. So what I did expect to be the reason why the owner of this cat had to let go of this cat was in fact the reason. I think most pet owners will probably kind of expect that to be the reason, because there's not a whole lot of reasons why somebody would be willing to give up a pet, especially if they love the pet as much as Satoru loved Nana. But so this book, for a very big part of this book, it seems to be focusing a lot more on human relationships than it is focusing on the relationship between Satoru and Nano. And my cat also likes to show its love by making annoying meowing sounds while I film. So it's mostly going into human relationships, it seems, at times. So Satoru is visiting these people that have played a big role in his past, trying to get them to take care of their cats, of his cats. And so in going to visit them, we are given stories of like impactful parts of their history together, but we are also seeing ways in which human connection can go wrong, and ways in which that error can be rectified, in which there is healing possible. But it is always also bringing those human relations back into the main narrative, back into the connection between Nana and Satoru. And so yeah, I really loved it. I really loved, I did also tab a few things, so I'm actually going to read one of these out. So this one I thought just was a very nice one to kind of, it's a nice one to recognize if you are a pet owner yourself. So it says, because it was a very special thing to have your own cat in your own house. Whenever he stayed overnight at Satoru's, sleeping on the futon beside his bed, he'd often be woken in the early hours by 4 feet clumping over him. Feeling the weight of a cat's paws pressing into your shoulders in the middle of the night, not much beats that. He would glance over and see Hachi curled up in a ball on top of Satoru's chest. Perhaps finding it too hard to breathe, Satoru, still asleep, would slide the cat beside him. Lucky guy, Kosuke thought. If he were my cat, we could sleep together and I would let him walk all over me. So it's very much looking in also in these very nice ways in which cats and their humans connect with one another, ways in which ways that other people might not always recognize or might not always consider love in the way that they consider love for a dog with a human, for example. But I very much like this look at cat-human relationships. So I'm very happy I finally got around to reading this one. I will actually be texting my mother and my sister about it because I was not the only one to get this book for Christmas. She also gave this book to my sister for Christmas, and so I'll be very happy to see what she thought about it. And I think she also bought it for herself, so I'll urge them to start reading this one. Now I am continuing on with my second read. I've taken the first step to becoming a divinity, and so I have started The City of Brass yesterday, but I basically only got to like 10 pages because I only started reading at like 11:30 in that one, so I'll update you guys on that one a little bit later. Today is also the release date for Eco Lifestyle, the next expansion pack of The Sims. I'm going to try not to buy it yet, and with any luck I can keep myself from buying it long enough to actually get it discounted for once, but I am very excited about this pack, so I'm not entirely sure. But so yeah, I'll be checking in with you guys later once I actually do some reading and actually know what to talk to you guys about. It is super bad weather here. I should be going to the supermarket, but with all of COVID-19 situations, if I go to the supermarket I'll have to stand in line and it's raining, so I would have to stand outside in the rain, so yeah, not entirely sure about this here. So I was just about to go to supermarkets, but this happened. So I don't know if you can fully see it, also my stupid focusing thing isn't happening, but yeah, it's raining quite heavily at this point. So I guess I'll wait a little bit longer because it's like even semi-flooding. Hey everyone! Am I in focus? I hate checking focus because I cannot check it from this distance. I'm going to hope so. Fate was in focus when I checked earlier. It's actually a good tip, I hope, unless I'm not in focus now, is just to put my cat there and then focus on my cat. But so, yeah, I'm about 100 pages into this book at this point. Yeah, thank you. That's how she repays me for that comment. So I'm about 100 pages into the book at this moment and I'm loving it. It's so great, really. It has inklings of a romance, but I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised to find a romance, so I'm not holding it against it yet. I do know it kind of irks me every single time that I see these sort of mentions of these sort of illusions of romances early on in fantasy novels. So I introduced this book as being set in 17th century Cairo, and that is also, of course, no, 18th century Cairo, and that is also what it says in the back. But if you are looking for a book set in 18th century Cairo, yeah, if you're looking for a book set in 18th century Cairo, this is not the one, because we leave 18th century Cairo almost immediately. But so yeah, this is very much rooted in Middle Eastern folk tales, I guess, Middle Eastern culture, looking very much at taking parts of stories that have been prevalent in that tradition. And I'm very much interested. I've never really looked into the jinn very much. I don't know if it's the same as a genie, whether the term genie is just like a sort of anglification of the term jinn to make it easier for us to understand that, whether, because it seems to be it seems to be more or less the same thing, but I would be interested to look a little bit into that a little bit more, also to see some like character art for these characters. I usually try to I usually don't really put an image in my head when I'm thinking of, you know, when I'm reading. I'm usually just skip over explanations of what people look like, but I'm really trying to paint a picture now in my head in order to, you know, have a more richer experience with the book. And I'm definitely enjoying it so far. I really have high hopes for this one, so I hope it doesn't disappoint later on. But so yeah, I do still want to get a little bit further into this book tonight, but I also still want to edit my May wrap-up, so I think I'm going to be doing some editing right now. Hey, so it is Saturday at this point, and I just wanted to include a small book haul into my reading vlog. That's what this is, because I bought a few books today, and usually I only do my hauls at the end of the month, but I thought, why not put them in there? Some of them are in reference to, you know, some things that I've talked about in terms of educating yourself about racism and about the darker pages of the history of the place you come from, but also about supporting Black authors. So the first one that I want to be talking about is the one that is unrelated to that, because I'm going to get that one out of the way first. Almost dropped my cell phone there. And that is Cleopatra by Alberto Angela, and this is a non-fiction about Cleopatra. So my name does not come from Cleopatra, my name comes from the Greek muse of history, but I do have a lifelong fascination with Egypt, especially with this time period when Egypt was at the height of its power, when it really was one of the first great powers of the world. And so I want to dive more into that period specifically, but I also want to learn a little bit more about Egyptian history afterwards. But so I thought I'd buy myself a book so that I can actually start that quest, and so I'm buying Cleopatra. And then let's dive into the books that I was just referencing to. So in order to support more Black authors, so I have a few already on my shelves, but I don't think I have too many of those left that I haven't read yet. And so one of the books that I bought was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. Can we first of all acknowledge that this is a beautiful cover? So I have not read any Elizabeth Acevedo, so she is the author of The Poet X and With the Fire on High. So these are YA contemporaries, which isn't necessarily, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience, let's just say that in general, with YA contemporary. But this one definitely sounded intriguing to me when I heard about it. So it's about two sisters who share a father, but they live apart and they live in different countries. So it says here as a sort of tagline, so I'm the child her father left her for in the summers, while she is the child my father left me for my entire life. And so their father dies at the beginning of this book, and then I'm assuming that they're going to meet, and it's going to look into the difficulties of this complex family structure, the difficulties of this very complex form of sisterhood, of a sisterly relationship. But I am hopeful that we're going to be able to find sisterly love in the end. But in the history section I did find a book that I've been meaning to read, and this is another example of me saying like, yeah, that would be interesting, I should be reading it. But apparently this book has been out already for 10 years and I still haven't read it. So around the time when this book came out, it became an instant bestseller. So many people in Belgium bought it, hopefully read it, and it is definitely a book that everybody in Belgium should be reading, and that is Congo by David van Rijbroek. So this is a non-fiction about the history of Congo. So I think I already referred to it in an earlier clip, but Congo is really the dark page in our history, you know. We didn't have a big empire or anything like that, but we were colonizers of Congo, and we were pretty harsh colonizers at that. So I'm very interested to finally learn a lot more about the colonial history of our country, because we did learn a little bit about this in high school, I think, but really limited in my opinion, and also, and definitely not like framed within the bigger narrative, the bigger history of Congo as a nation. And since this is Congo a history, I'm going to assume that we're also getting a lot of information about Congo before we came and Congo after. I don't know, maybe we are the ones who turned it into Congo, but I'm hoping that it's definitely going to look at, you know, the geographic area that is Congo, and you know, what was there before we came, what was there after we came. So I'm definitely interested to frame our presence there within the bigger scope of the history of the nation, and yeah, looking at and confronting that dark page in our history. That is the books that I bought now, and hopefully I won't let them linger for too long, but in any case, in the beginning of the year I made a resolution to prioritize recent purchases. This is also why in June I'm mainly only reading recent purchases. So I think I still have like 16 books that I bought this year that I need to read, but 13 of those are on my TBR this month, so hopefully I get around to all of those. This is going to be my last update today, Sunday, and then tomorrow I'll just round off this vlog and then hopefully get around to editing it in time to actually post this one at some point, at some timely point, because editing is definitely my major problem when it comes to BookTube. But I am close to the ending. Not entirely that close. I'm like 150 pages away from the ending, and it is like 7:30 at this point, so I don't think I'll be able to finish it tonight, but I do still want to get quite a chunk of the way through. Hopefully I'll get to like the 450 page mark or something, and then I have like 80 pages left in the book. So in the end, yesterday I did start White Rage, but I didn't read too much in it, and I think I'm just too engrossed in City of Brass at this point. So I'm going to be finishing this one, and then I'm going to center my full attention on White Rage afterwards. So City of Brass, don't remember when I last updated you guys on this one, but I am definitely loving it. So I went on a little bit of a marathon with it because I wanted to get it to a certain part in the book, but once I got to that part, I basically couldn't stop neither. God, sorry. And so really loving it. I'm loving how it's very much a sort of political book, in the sense that it's looking at the Jin society, but the Jin society is very much divided into 5 or 6 different tribes, and there's a whole lot of prejudice, a whole lot of resentment behind these different tribes, and a whole lot of history behind them. And like the main big conflict is between like this one tribe, the Daeva. This is my interpretation of how to pronounce that, and the other tribes, because the Daeva have a little bit of a superiority complex and seem to have been, you know, like the big bad at some point, and they feel themselves to be superior because they consider them to be like the pure bloods, that they don't mix with humans, and all the other tribes have mixed with humans, and they've created this sort of half-breed, the Shafit, as a result of this. And that's very much at the foreground of this as well. It's not at the background, it's very much at the foreground. There's a lot of references to these prejudices between the different tribes, but also the main conflict here is what to do with the Shafit, because the Shafit are very much being oppressed, being kept down, and so these sort of prejudices between tribes have very much created this problem and very much colored this problem as well. So I'm very much liking that whole conflict, and then I'm very much liking the characters. I will say that I am actually more intrigued by the male characters that we are following than by our female protagonists. So we're mainly following 2 perspectives here. We're following Nari, which is our protagonist in the sense that she's the one that we follow from the beginning, and then we have Ali, who is the younger prince of the Jin, and I'm actually, and then we also, but never from his own perspective, have Dara, who's a very important character in this one. And so I'm very much intrigued by the perspectives of the two men, because like Dara, he is a Jinn, he is of the Daeva tribe, so he has this sort of superiority complex. He has a lot of prejudices because he's also been around for a very long time, so a lot of these prejudices and these resentments are a lot fresher in his mind than they are to like the current generation, that is where like some of these past events aren't as fresh anymore in their minds. Also, they have had their version of events that has been handed down to them. So that is part of what we are dealing with, but he has also been a Jinn that has had bad experiences. Not going to try to go into spoilers, and it deals a lot with him also having to work through some of those at his own time. And then Ali is someone who is struggling with family loyalty throughout this book. So he has principle, he has his faith, and he has the teachings of his faith that have been prominent in his life, but he's seeing that these teachings of his faith aren't really being respected by his family members, or at least not in his opinion, and he is very much conflicted between following his heart, doing what he believes to be right, or his following his family and being loyal to his family, being loyal to his brother, his father. And so that is something that he struggles with a lot throughout this book. So, and I find those two character explorations a lot more fascinating than what we're seeing with Nadi, because Nadi at this point, you know, I don't necessarily see a lot of character growth there. I don't very much see where her character growth is going to go to. I think she's very much a plot instigator at this point, and don't get me wrong, I like her, but I do want to kind of see what is going to be happening in terms of development. How is the author going to enrich her character growth? Because at the moment, that's for me somewhat missing. But regardless of that, I am absolutely enjoying this book, loving it. There is a romantic V a little bit, not entirely sure yet. I am hopeful that it will just be a romance and a friendship, but there is a potential of making that into a V, and yeah, I'm kind of there for it. I kind of think that that other couple would work better, but I've also seen it done so many times that I'm just like, no, can we just not go there in this one? Time to round off this week's reading vlog. So it's Monday after work. I already went to physical therapy, so I'm just going to quickly go over what I read this week. So just page count wise, I've talked about my feelings for this book throughout the reading vlog. So first off, I read the entirety of the Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. I read 256 pages in this one, gave it a 5-star rating. I then moved on to City of Brass, of which I read, good question, where was I? There. And I read 483 pages of City of Brass, and then I also read 16 pages of White Rage. So in total I have read about 775 pages. I think I did the math yesterday. So 775 pages in the first 7 days. I really enjoyed this one. We'll be finishing it now. So next week's reading vlog will start out with me finishing City of Brass. So in terms of my read-alongs or readathons, the only book that I finished for a readathon is Traveling Cat Chronicles, which I read in order to become the goddess in Make Your MythTaker, and this was for the prompt to read a book with a non-human main character. So yeah, see you guys next week for my next reading vlog.